Back to the Beginning was just over a month ago, and ever since it was announced, we knew that the proceeds from the event would be going to 3 different charities: Birmingham Children's Hospital, Acorn Children's Hospice, and Cure Parkinson's. And within the days following that monumental event, it was being widely reported that the event had raised $190 million for said charities. That number came from Tom Morello, who is, of course, the music director of the event. He shared that in a post on Instagram, although now it appears that that post has been edited and he has removed the image sharing that number, as well as the portion of the caption that referred to that. But that 190 million number was then shared by a ton of publications, even myself, but it was also specifically reported in Billboard, and The Guardian also reported that over 5 million people watched the live stream of Back to the Beginning. So at the $30 price point for the live stream ticket times 5 million people, that would give you roughly, give or take, $150 million in revenue. So I guess the other $40 million would have had to come from ticket sales plus merch sales in that original $190 million figure that Morello claimed. But now it would appear we know why it would seem that Morello removed that, because a new interview with Sharon Osbourne was just published in Pollstar, which Pollstar, if you don't know, is sort of the industry standard for ticket sales and box office reports, and there's interviews with booking agents and managers, promoters, etc., things like that. Now, the interview was just published this week, but it was actually conducted on July 17th, so about a week or so before Ozzy's death. I don't think Sharon has spoken publicly since Ozzy passed on July 22nd, but this interview was done about a week and a half after Back to the Beginning, and in it, Sharon really puts on blast the reporting that the event did those high numbers, beginning with how much money the event raised overall, where she said to Pollstar, "One of the things that's frightening me is all this false press about how we've made $140 million in all of this." And I'm like, God, I wish we could have for one gig. It's just ridiculous, the different stories. I went on the internet the next morning and it was like 140 million, 160 million. And I'm like, where does this stuff come from? And people like Billboard have printed it. When it's then pointed out that Billboard actually had it at $190 million, Sharon adds, "Oh, $190 million? Thank you, Billboard, for getting it wrong." Just ridiculous. Like I mentioned, those numbers came just a few days after the event. So then Sharon, in that Pollstar interview, explains why it would take much longer to figure out the exact totals because of expenses and things like that from the event. Here's what she said. "It takes a really long time because we've had all of the bands that we had come in and their expenses, and it'll take a good 6 weeks to get the final number because we're selling merch for another 2 weeks from the gig. So we've got another 2 weeks of sales yet to add to it. It'll be another 4 weeks and it'll be done." So if she said that in mid-July, I would guess the final numbers will probably be accounted for within the week or so, I would imagine. But given that Ozzy is sadly no longer here and the family is still mourning, who knows when or if those numbers will actually be released. I mean, hell, we're still waiting to hear who Sharon apparently kicked off of Back to the Beginning. So I don't know. But something else to point out, which I would think a lot of people figured, you know, she mentions in that Pollstar interview all of the expenses from the bands that performed and alludes to that coming out of the gross, which would make sense. And she previously said in an interview with Music Week, she said that the travel was being covered. So while maybe nobody got paid to play per se, their expenses were, at least in most cases, covered. So you figure that's probably flights, hotels, ground transportation to and from the venue and the hotel, etc. Just for the artists, plus all of the other expenses that go into any event, which I'm sure came out of the gross, you know, paying for things like the venue, Villa Park. Being a stadium, I'm sure that was quite costly, could be well over $100,000. I mean, who God only knows how much that was. Plus all the lighting, the sound, venue and production staffing, catering, the cost of printing the merch, marketing, paying Mercury Studios to produce the live stream. Things like that are not cheap. Very, very expensive to do any event, let alone one of this magnitude. And Pollstar actually brought up a great point in that interview that they did with Sharon, where they said it's not really helpful for the charity organizations to see numbers like $190 million being widely reported, because then those organizations are going to expect to be getting that much money. Here's how Sharon responded to that. "Oh my God, it's the Children's Hospital, a Children's Hospice, and Parkinson's research. Everybody thinks that they're going to cure everything with this much money, but it's not the real world." Okay, though, let's get into some actual numbers here, because Sharon actually gave some different sales figures to Pollstar, beginning with the actual number of tickets sold to the event in person. We're not talking the live stream here, just the actual physical concert, where she says that 40,000 tickets were sold. She says the venue had a 44,000 capacity, but with the production kills, which are just the tickets that you can't sell because of the production, as it sounds, the stage taking up seats, all that kind of stuff. She says the total number of tickets sold was 40,000. Now, for what it's worth, I will say that multiple places online cite Villa Park's capacity as being just over 42,000, but I mean, we're really splitting hairs here, so I digress. It is, of course, very hard to know what the rough gross from ticket sales would have been, given all of the various price points of tickets, VIP packages, things like that. But after looking around, it seems like the average ticket price between the lowest options available plus all the way at the high end of the VIP packages was somewhere in the upper 400s. Mind you, this is just the average, upper 400s, and we're talking US dollars here. But so between the higher 400s and the mid $500 range. So let's just call it $500 US even. And then you times that by the 40,000 tickets that Sharon says were sold. That would, of course, give you $20 million. Again, this is just a very rough ballpark from just doing some basic math. Do not take this as gospel, but let's say that the $20 million gross just from tickets, one would think merch sale profits would be going to charity as well. Of course, there is absolutely no way of knowing what that would be, but let's just say for fun that every single person in attendance at Back to the Beginning bought a shirt. I don't know the prices. Let's just say it equates to $50 US. That would be $2 million. So we add that to our $20 million from the tickets. Now we have a total of $22 million. And again, I really cannot stress enough, simply just spitballing numbers with basic math here, just for a very rough estimate that could potentially be way off. So keep that in mind. But regardless of what that number may or may not be, a bulk of that original $190 million you figure was taking into account the revenue from the live stream. As mentioned, The Guardian said over 5 million people watched it, which if all 5 million people bought a live stream ticket, that would equate to at least $150 million at $30 a ticket. So I guess the assumption was that $40 million came from the actual event itself in person, which seems insanely high, but $190 million is what was reported. But Sharon actually gave Pollstar the number of live stream sales and how the number of 5 million people apparently came to be. Here's what she said. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the streaming was 275,000 bought it, but Mercury Studios, which produced and was saying that a lot of rock clubs all over the world bought it and played it in-house. So there were 200 to 300 people watching it in one facility. You would need quite a few clubs at full 300 capacity buying that stream to reach that 5 million number. So if what The Guardian said is not true and what Sharon is saying is actually true, I have no idea where that 5 million number came from. But regardless, 275,000 sales at $30 each is obviously nowhere near $150 million. That number equates to 8.25 million. So adding that on to the 22 million from earlier, we are at a rounded grand total of $30 million. Now, Sharon did say in that interview from mid-July that they were going to be selling Back to the Beginning merch for a couple of weeks following the show. Looking around online, it looks like that merch is no longer available. So I guess if you were planning on getting something and you didn't, it looks like you might have missed out, unless I'm missing something. But obviously, we have zero way of knowing those figures. But we know for a fact, with that $30 million gross that we just came up with, I mean, we know that nowhere near $160 million in Back to the Beginning merch was sold. You would need that $160 million to get to that $190 million figure. Maybe there was a few $1 million in Back to the Beginning merch sold online at most, but you could be so generous and double our $30 million, call it $60 million. You could even triple it, call it $90 million, and you're still not even at half of the reported $190 million. So it will be very interesting to see the final totals if those ever get released. As we know, too, Back to the Beginning will be shown in theaters early next year. It's being turned into a 100-minute film. That's going to be in theaters early 2026, with a physical release to follow later in the year. As far as I know, nothing has been said about proceeds from the film to be donated to charity. Obviously, that would inflate that total number a little bit, although concert films, I mean, certainly they do not do the box office business that a regular movie does. So I don't know, but according to Sharon, that $190 million figure that was reported by Tom Morello and Billboard and myself, a bunch of others, that number is apparently way off. And if those stream sales that she gave to Pollstar are accurate, then she would be totally accurate, unless there's, again, something I'm missing. But I don't know. That is how it seems to be to me. I would love to hear all of your thoughts on this. Let me know down below. I will also put a link to that Pollstar interview. It is a great read, and there's a lot more in there than what we just covered. But for now, that is all that I got for you. Thank you so much for hanging out. Feel free to drop a like and subscribe below if you feel like it, and I'll see you next time.